Needless to say, anything that came out of the Bush administration probably wasn't good for your health, as well as a lot of other things. But my blood pressure, I guess, went up a few notches today, and I just had it taken at my doctor's office, who was very surprised to see those numbers. But I essentially can explain this because 10 minutes before I had just read an article from which I will quote here. John Yoo, and you may remember, John Yoo is basically the author of one of the most infamous legal documents and memos to ever come out of the Department of Justice during the Bush administration. His legal opinion was widely referred to by that administration essentially as a legal justification for torture. So yeah, my blood pressure went up a few notches, and especially after reading this article. John Yoo doesn't have any regrets about his controversial legal opinions, many of which were, of course, later withdrawn and repudiated. I came across, or this author rather, that I'm quoting from, came across an interview with John Yoo, Professor John Yoo, with the Orange County Register, which was published on March the 3rd. Here is what Dr. John Yoo had to say. The memos I wrote were not for public consumption. I wonder why not. Yoo told the Orange County Register. They lack a certain polish. I think it would have been better just to explain government policy rather than try to give the unvarnished truth and legal advice to the president. It goes on to say, I think the job of a lawyer is to give a straight answer to a client. One thing I sometimes worry about is that lawyers in the future in government are going to start worrying about what people are going to think of me. This is just incredible. So, in other words, yeah, if you don't represent the Constitution, if you only represent your client in office, highest office of the land, I might say, then evidently John Yoo finds no problem with that. He goes on to say in this interview, the thing I'm really struck with is that when you are in government, you have very little time to make important decisions. You don't have the luxury to research every single thing, and that's going to be accelerated in wartime. Now let me ask one question of Dr. John Yoo. Isn't it the purpose of representative government that the government and their appointed officers and so on actually do the research for us? Because that's what representative government is all about, isn't it? Because none of us actually have 24 hours, 7 days a week the time to do that. That's why it's called a representative government. Evidently, John Yoo has never heard of such a notion. Now, he also told the Orange County Register that the trade-off against using brutal interrogation methods means that we will get less information about the enemy. And remember this sentence right here. Someone can say, I think it's more important than other countries. I think it's more important that other countries have a more favorable opinion of us than any intelligence we gain from this type of interrogation. It's kind of a cost and benefit analysis, Yoo said. remember that sentence. So, essentially, and I'm just sort of going over this article here, at this very standing, for one thing, Dr. John Yoo is still a tenured professor at the University of Berkeley, and he has, of course, been met with protests and so on from students and faculty alike. And now, of course, he has sort of taken a little leave of absence, since he's now teaching at Chapman University in California, part of that whole university system. And where he teaches First Amendment and freedom rights, and which, of course, in his opinion, can be curtailed at any time by the authority of the president alone. Quite interesting, I might say. And then, of course, as some of us may have already known or paid attention to, this person's legal work during Bush's first term in office has been roundly criticized by not more than a few dozen of the nation's leading legal scholars. In other words, his theories have been trashed, and rightly so. An investigation by Marshall Jarrett, head of the Justice Department's Office of Professional Responsibility, reached a damning conclusion about numerous cases of misconduct in the advice from John Yoo and other lawyers at the previous OLC during the Bush administration. But you know what? Now that this guy is teaching at Chapman College, here comes the kicker. This is it. So, having been ostracized from Berkeley, not officially, but essentially through a major consensus within that university community, not exactly coming from the top, the chancellor, you might say, but from the collective faculty and student body. Here's what he's teaching now at Chapman College to young and impressionable minds. What he's teaching is, since his leave of absence from Berkeley, is he teaches foreign relations law. Yeah, the same Dr. Yoo. And so, of course, Brad DeLong, an economist professor, wrote a letter to Berkeley's chancellor basically calling for Yoo to be fired. And I will join that consensus, even though I'm not a member of the faculty or the student body at Berkeley. But I'll tell you what, a professor who enables the government to torture has absolutely no place teaching in any university in this country. Mr. Yoo has made himself the pariah of his own profession, not just among hippies at Berkeley, but amongst international law professors and the law of this land. His enabling of the Bush administration's torture flies in the face not only of U.S. constitutional law and our international agreements, but of generations of U.S. opposition to human rights violations around the world, notably those of the Nazis. And these very same Nazi apologists, lawyers like you, were prosecuted during those trials, and they were executed. Dr. Yoo not only deserves to be stripped of his honor of a tenured professor, as a matter of fact, he belongs in front of a war crime trial, as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I guess my blood pressure went up a few notches after reading this. Thanks for listening.